Welcome back, everybody. Bjthebrave here, back for part 2 of Forgecast, our podcast about Warhammer 40k WARPFORGE, the card game. So you've hopefully just watched part 1 over on my partner in crime, the Ecclesiarch's channel. If you haven't seen that yet, I'm going to put a link below, so check out the description and go watch that first, and then come on back. So yeah, Ecclesiarch, welcome back, buddy.
Thank you for having me once again. Hello, guys, and glad that you made it for part 2.
So we've just been chatting all about our January season, and we also did our little section on card of the week and things that have been working well, and maybe some underpowered cards. So what's your, before we jump into the meta report, which got released literally last night, we're going to dive into that and give our kind of thoughts and breakdown on the meta. But before we do that, new season today. What are you? How are you feeling? You know, we just come off the finish of a race and last season. Are you going to take a bit of time out? Have you got a kind of plan for how you want to play this season? Any decks in mind? What are you thinking?
Actually, there are two things that I'm going to do. Number one thing is what I mentioned. I will be doing some Zackstruck gameplay.
Nice.
Because, as I said, as we promised, so I'm going to be making a Zackstruck video, and I'm going to be trying to climb early season with Zackstruck. I think that's going to be pretty fun in its own way. And when it comes to like something else, there are two more things that I have in mind. If I do get the Terror of Vandergast anytime soon, I'm going to be making a video on it for sure. And on top of that, I'm looking to revisit my Emotech deck and kind of perfect it. And so expect to see a new Emotech video, boys. Perhaps with some new goodies.
I'm excited. I'm more excited about your season than I am about mine, because I'm like, I really want to see the Zagstruck. I think Zagstruck, by the way, there's no reason why you couldn't make top 10 with Zagstruck. I think you could do a really good deck with him, and also really interested to see what you do with Imotech, because I agree. I think that deck kind of perhaps needs updating. I don't know whether there's anything that you can make better, so I'm really curious to kind of see like where you take that, and that'll be really interesting. Yeah, definitely do some videos and trial some stuff.
As for Zackstruck, I do want to say one thing about that. I think that he is very underrated when it comes to dealing with Uriel. If Uriel is actually one of your problems, Zackstruck is a good answer, because Zackstruck really bashes him really hard, really out aggroes him. And the fun part is, if you play against Uriel, I think with Zackstruck you just play Orbital Bombardment, and you just basically you just have him at your mercy. Even Papa told me, I remember that, funny enough, Zackstruck was a bad matchup. And I saw it myself, like when I played a couple of Uriel games, Zackstruck was not easy, because like him dealing 3 damage every turn and taking only 1 kind of discourages you from attacking face yourself, and kind of puts you in an awkward spot. So yeah.
He's good, and he's not a meme. Like, I think people forget, like he is an Orc Warlord. That automatically makes him good, right? Like, you've got the best card collection faction in the game. You look at the win rates. Zagstruck wasn't that far behind the others. There's no reason why you can't make a powerful Zagstruck. And like you said, if you're in a meta where the beatdown, it's all about who's the beatdown, which I think we are, to be honest, at the minute. I think you're actually inspiring me to play some Zagstruck as well, and I want to build some different Orc decks. But yeah, I think that'll be really cool. I look forward to seeing it, my man. Anything else in terms of this season? You're just gonna kind of ride that out. Are you gonna kind of like? Are you just basically like, yeah, you don't play those, and if you climb and you go and defeat, fine, and if not, because I'm
just gonna be having some fun with it. I want to start off climbing with Emotech, as I said, and Zackstruck because like I want to see how well it works. And on top of that, when it comes to Emotech, there's been a long time since I've actually went into playing Emotech. Like, I think I stopped playing Emotech like after the preseason because I got tired, because Emotech games are so tiring. Every one of those games is very long. Like, I got to 100 wins with him, and then I stopped playing him because I was like, okay, no more, please. So now I kind of miss playing it. So I'm gonna try to get to at least like top 20 with it, and then I'll see what I can switch to.
Nice.
So we'll see. Unless, of course, Zackstruck like works out so well that I kind of skyrocket in the higher ranks. I don't know.
Nice. Oh, that's exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing how you get on with that. Yeah, I actually, for me, I kind of I bought the Terror bundle, and I made a whole video about it. If people want to go and watch, my rationale for it, I wasn't very happy with some of the things that happened and with how Everguild released it and stuff, some of the shenanigans that went on. But like I said, I won't go on about that now. I made a big video about it, so go and watch it. But I did see it as like supporting Everguild. I didn't really need to buy the bundle. I kind of could have got a lot of the cards anyway because I had loads of wild cards and stuff like that. But I bought it, and it was my way of supporting them. I haven't, however, played much with the new cards, particularly on ladder. I've been doing a lot of practice games. I didn't want to tank my ladder rank because weirdly it released 4 days before the new season, which I also think is a bad idea. But now that we're a season reset, I feel free to experiment again. So I have got 2 different Terror decks. One is like a very critters heavy build, which I've already released the video for that, and it's like focused on lots of like little things and going wide. And it's like an aggro build. And then the second one is like more like a traditional Swarmlordy type of deck, but using the Terror. And that's one I really want to test. And I mean, it feels quite powerful actually, that one. I mean, they both feel okay. I mean, but like I say, I need to test it. So that's what I want to do. And then I've also got a Norm Emissary card. I'm really disappointed that she doesn't get her cost reduced from being anywhere in the deck. It's not clear at all on the description of the card, but for those who don't know, it has to be in your hand to receive the discount from triggering Synapse. That said, I have built, I think the way to use her is to use her like in something like my Neurothroat build that I had that was working well last season, and I'm basically going to modify that shell and put her in. And I think the way to use her is you use her like an alternative win condition in that deck. So you don't need to win the game that way. There are other ways to win. But if you get her, and I had some games where I got 2 of her on the board at once, and it was just insane using flank and things like that. I mean, if it goes off, it's like it's crazy, right? Like you put them in stealth or you flank them or whatever. But so I want to test the new cards. Outside of that, I'm gonna go back to my Ghost Ship deck, which I don't think will be massively powerful, if I'm honest, but I want to play, because I got the Res Orb, so I kind of want to play with that. The biggest thing, if I'm honest, is I'm not massively motivated to play ladder at the minute. I don't feel we just come off of a climb and I pushed a bit, and I just don't want to do it again. I'd rather experiment. I think we peaked too early last season, whereby we were in the race, right? So then we couldn't experiment. I think I'll put a joke on our Mine, Yours and Papa's Discord that said something like, "How can you tell we're all men in this thing because we peaked too early?" And anyway, but I think actually what I've learned from last season is just spend 2 or 3 weeks just having fun, man. Like if you get your Zagstruck, I think you probably could very quickly put together 25 wins and climb quite quickly. So just enjoy experimenting to start with, where you don't have that pressure of losing. That's really my plan. And then whether I'll push or not, I don't know. Honestly, right now, especially because there's no balance patch, I'm not feeling, I don't know about you, but I'm just not feeling that motivated to play ladder. It just feels a bit... We only got 10 cards, and I'm going to experiment with them, but I imagine after a week, I'll be kind of over it, and then... Yeah, everything else is the same as last season. I imagine Gruk will still be the best deck. I've no doubt about it. And
honestly speaking, that's so weird. Like, I was expecting a balance patch, and I'm not right now. It has me thinking, what does this mean? Does this mean that there's no balance patch at all this month, or does it mean that it's gonna come later? Because as you remember, like EG said, that balance patches will come with new seasons.
Exactly. I think. Do you know what I read into it, Ecclesiarch? I read into it that the size of the dev team means they always have to prioritize. And I think when they release an expansion, like they've released it, I think that means we don't get a balance patch. Especially if the balance isn't, like, we don't need it. Like, the game's not broken at the minute. Like, we haven't got a Gazgul situation. I think if we did, they probably would be forced to at least do something about that. But outside of that, like, they don't need it. And I just wonder whether they just had so many priorities with getting the release out that we just didn't get one. But it's a real shame, because it freshens it up for all the other factions. It freshens the whole game up. In many respects, I'd say the balance patch is better than the new releases for freshening up the season, because everybody's affected by it.
Yeah, I guess so, because like sure the Tyranid thing is very fun because you got some new cards and stuff like that, but I think balance patch is in order. And speaking of the new cards, as I remember, we're due to get another reinforcement in March, and then we get a expansion in April, right? I think that's the plan. That's the roadmap, I believe. Somehow I remember that. I think I saw somewhere.
Oh, okay.
Maybe
I've
I'm
not seen
wrong.
that then. Where? Yeah, I'd be interested where that came from.
Somewhere on Discord, I think I saw. I might be wrong,
Someone
but
wrote on Discord. Someone said we're not going to get the Tau till April, and I was like, well, where have you got that from? Because the only thing that I've seen released from Everguild is we're going to get a new faction. I think they said, did they say Q? Don't think they said Q1, but I think they said, did they say Q1 or the first half of the year originally? There was that, and then the other thing they just said was what their cadence would be, in terms of we'd get 3 new factions a year and 6 of the mini drops. But they never said like, oh, we're going to get 2 and then what. They never said the order like that. So I don't know where that's come from, to be honest. Oh,
yeah, there you go. Here it is. I found it. So Tyranids, the 1st of February, then add on to 10th of March, new expansion 20th of April.
was that an Everguild
I don't
publication though?
know. No. I don't know.
No,
Like
I don't
maybe.
think it was.
Okay. In any case, let's assume for a second that it might be
Go
correct.
on then.
I want to see Trez in the Infinite in March. either that, or, and I think this is going to be the case, or I want to see Gilliman for Ultramarines. And I have no doubt that Gilliman is gonna drop at some point. Like, come on, like it's
Yeah,
impossible
I,
for
I
Adon to
I
drop.
have a feeling. Um, how do I say this delicately? I have a very strong feeling that the next mini patch won't be marine related. Let's put it that way. There's
Won't be or will be?
won't be.
Ah,
I have a
okay.
very strong. I would bet a lot of money that the next expansion isn't marines. So yeah, but
No, by expansion, like big expansion, for sure, it's
no, I mean
probably.
the drop of
Oh,
cards.
really?
Yeah,
Who do you think it's gonna be for? I think it's gonna
I've
be
no idea.
Necrons.
I've no idea, but I've got a very good reason why I don't think why I kind of know it won't be marines, but
Very
I
well.
don't want to like you know.
Yeah, sure.
Um,
Let's make some fun guesses. I think it's the Necrons.
They need something, don't they? Eldar and Necrons feel like the ones that like they've just been a bit left. Like they just nothing's happened. They've not really had many buffs. They've not really had anything for 2 seasons. They need something, just to freshen it up. Not from a power level or anything. They just need some new stuff.
Especially in Necrons, there's only one playstyle for Necrons. Like Scarabs don't exist, so there's only one
Yeah,
one playstyle for Necrons, which is the Tomb World big unit. I think we need the Frenzy package there. We
yeah.
need the Frenzy one, yeah,
Frenzy's just yeah, yeah.
because
We
it's a bad thing overall, but something, because there's so many Frenzy units that are just useless.
yeah.
So yeah, maybe there's
I don't know, man. I'm
something
just
there.
ready for a proper expansion, and it'd be really interesting. The other thing, like the thing about when, for example, the Tau come out, if it's Tau or Imperial Guard, whoever it is, they'll have to change the UI itself, right? Like, where do they fit in everything? So there's going to be some sort of like bit of an overhaul of the UI when the new faction drops, and so I'm kind of wondering whether that fits in with some of the changes, maybe even some of the things we've talked about, but things that they've got planned will happen when that drops. So it's not just about the new cards. I think this is going to be give the game itself like a bit of a facelift or a bit of an uplift. That's I'm hoping, and I'm guessing like they kind of have to do something because it literally wouldn't fit on the. If you go and look at how the game's laid out, where do you put Tau? Like they would have to actually redesign things a little bit. So I think there's going to be a bit of a facelift to the game when that happens, and it just can't come soon enough, man. That's going to excite the hell out of me. I just can't wait. Can't wait for that. Do you think they'll do a drop? Like, do you think they'll do a bundle where you can just buy all the new stuff like they did with the Tyranid cards?
100%.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
There's always gonna be that,
It's
but
going to
I
be a
think
lot of
like
money. It's going to be expensive though.
yeah, that's why I kind of stopped it wasn't only that I was kind of angry or something. I was just that didn't seem worth it, because like
So
50
expensive.
$50 is like a lot. I mean, it depends on what you're getting, right? Like considering like the premium campaign is $20, and you get so much stuff. I was like, why give $50 for two legendary cards? Everything else you can get like from wild cards and
Yeah.
stuff. They're too easy. They're gonna drop. Open 10 packs and something's gonna drop. But like two legendaries, $50. I don't think so. I'd much rather, if I were to waste like some money, I'd much rather get the deals where you get like 30 packs or something, because like it just
Yeah.
doesn't work like that. So
No.
I'll most probably hold off from buying any of those. But for example, once the new faction drops in the expansion, let's say whatever it is, I'm definitely gonna get the premium campaign. That's for sure. Because if they don't like suddenly increase the cost of the premium campaigns to insanity, I'm certainly going to get a premium campaign for the new factions as well. If that's gonna be a thing, I think that should be a thing as well. I think they should do that. I hope that there's going to be a campaign for every faction. And yeah, I would
Yeah.
definitely grab that for sure. I would definitely grab that. And
100%.
you know what's going to be funny? You know what's going to be funny? If the new expansion is not Tau, that would be very funny.
No, it wouldn't. I'm I'm desperate to get my hands on them. So,
A
to be
lot of
honest,
people would be upset.
I would be upset. If it's Cadia, that'd be cool. I'd take that. But I'd really love to see. Yeah, I'd love to see the town. Um, anyway, we'll talk a little bit more about like where we think the game's at. Actually, we might as well. We're kind of already on there. Maybe we do that
Yeah.
now and then go in the meta report. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of like what else we want to see and where we are with the game. I mean, for me, as I say, like I'm suffering from a lack of things to do in the game. I appreciate not everyone will be there, but I've got every legendary now except for I think Inspiring Zeal. Like we just said, the season's reset and I'm already legendary, which I think is a really big mistake. I think they're missing a massive trick there. And I'm not. Yeah, I've got these new cards. I'm obviously going to build a few new decks around that. But outside of that, yeah, I can't wait for that proper expansion. I want the new faction. I want the UI facelift that's going to come with it. And for me, there's kind of really other than them kind of reimagining the ladder system, like I've talked about a million times, and the Gwent Pro ladder, blah blah blah. Like that's the thing that's going to inject excitement into me. I do want them to. I do think that what they could do is just in terms of practically, right? Like I appreciate that it's a lot of resource to get lots of new factions in the game quickly. Then it's not going to happen quick enough in a way. But I do think that a way around that is to buff cards. They could. I made a video called 5 buffs for every faction. Like they could do things like that at the balance patch, and that is a way of them quickly refreshing the game. But yeah, I haven't
You
got much more to
know,
say on it. What about you? What do you think the game needs at the minute?
I'll tell you, but first I got a very funny question, so you'll find it very funny, but I gotta tell you, did they already add the replay system?
Yeah,
They did, right?
yeah.
Okay, so I almost forgot that they added that, and I didn't
It's
check
very
those out
good.
too.
It's cool. I mean, the controls are a bit. I think you could do with more better controls on it, but it's great. I made a video. My Grook video. I used the replay system, and personally, I think it might be my best video. Like, it was so much easier to commentate on my games and really break down the plays. Like, if I was just a gamer watching me, I'd be like, I got so much more from that video because I was actually commentating the plays and talking about the different options. I think the replay system is fantastic.
Yeah, that is one of the things that we really needed, and we got it, so I'm pretty happy about that.
Achievements? Do
Uh,
you like that?
I no, I don't. I'll tell you
Oh,
why. I do,
I
but
like
I
them.
don't.
I like them.
I do and I do and I don't. I like it because it kind of already gave me the feeling that I want to get all the achievements.
Yeah.
But it would be very nice if we got something for them, because in Horsehead's Allegiance we did. There were certain achievements that when you would do, you would get a golden crate, which was I think guaranteed
Okay.
legendary or something. I remember there was something like that, like
Okay.
maybe not guaranteed legendary, but you got some stuff for it. So it would
Yeah.
be cool if we even got a booster or maybe like some gems or something, or maybe a title at least, or a
Yeah.
cosmetic or
I,
something.
I, I,
You could,
it's more of a
yeah.
status thing. The thing I think that should happen is, let's say we load up a game. Let's say we're playing a game. Oh, I'm playing against the Ecclesiarch. It should show me what your achievement rating is. So it should say the Ecclesiarch, and then
There's also that.
yeah, because I think it's a status thing, isn't it? It's like that, and it's like that fun of, oh, I've collected all everything, and But the overwhelming thing about it, and I'm not really a massive guy, I'm not big for like the cosmetic. I just want the cards. I'm quite practical about it. But what I do love about the achievements, it gives me a bit of a Gwent feeling. It's just cozy. I think in a word, it's just cozy. It's something like cozy about going, I just finished a game and it's like, I just popped to achieve, and then go and have a little look, and I don't know, I quite like it. But again, it's not a massively impactful feature, but it's a cozy, nice feature.
Yeah, it's something that you want the game to have for sure. Like, and I do agree absolutely that you need this kind of thing in a game. I think it just would be cool if it also amounted to something, or if it didn't, at least displayed. That's brings me to one very important point. That's one thing that we need right now. That is to display the title and the
Yeah,
achievement and something because we have all these cool titles, but like
yeah,
and like
yeah,
nobody sees it. In Horse Heresy Legions, you could see it. There was like the name, there was the icon, then there was the badge, and there was the title
yeah,
on the post game screen. So that would be very cool. I'm sure that they're gonna do it. It's no rush for that, but it's cool if they do it. Now let me tell you a couple of things that this game desperately needs. I think there are two things that this game needs desperately. Number one, and this has been brought up many times, and Everguild should really work on this very quickly. Speed the goddamn game up. Like, oh my god, yesterday I said I was playing Emotech and I had like dropping this Lich card and resurrecting the Lich card with the Technomancer. Oh my god, it took like forever until like you have this like laser animation and then it slowly starts to rebuild and then still a small pause until it becomes active. Like it takes you like 4 or 5 seconds just to wait for that. It needs to go, man.
mm,
You gotta either make it like that things are simultaneously happening, like for example as the laser is shooting he already starts rebuilding, and just speed up the animations because this is terrifying.
yeah.
There's also a necessity to speed up the ranged attack animation because I find myself getting angry when people do ranged attacks as defaults when trading face with Warlord. I was like, why are you doing that? Like, it's taking so much time. I know it looks cool, but like, yeah, they need to speed up the game. That's number one priority for me. Well, let's say number 1/2 because there's the other one which is a even bigger priority if you ask me. And the biggest priority right now is we need the lodge mechanic, the alliance mechanic, or
Oh
whatever you
yeah.
want
Oh,
to
I
call
forgot
it.
about that. I
This
forgot
is
about that.
absolutely necessary because I think Pirates actually made a very good point on it, either on his stream or on Discord. I remember he said that like the social part of these games is very important, because it really brings you together. Because then there's gonna be like discords made for certain clans, and there's gonna be like group achievements, the coordination. Like in Legions, you had like this when you would play draft event, which I was called there, you were getting points as a lodge, and then you would also rise at points in the lodge ranking, which would display that you were the top lodge. And on top of that, your monthly reward from the draft. There was a monthly draft reward on top. Like when
Cool.
the month would finish, you would get a crate based on how far your lodge went. So it was so good, and this game really needs that very quickly so that it becomes more alive. And honestly speaking, like because like you know what, think about like when you were a kid. Like think back to it. How many times was there when like not even a kid, like it could even be now. Like how many times is when like a couple of friends together say, hey, do you want to make a clan in World of
Yeah.
Warcraft, a guild, or
Yeah.
do you want to make a clan in this game? Like it's often something that really, when well at least when I was a kid, like it was always that, let's start this game and make a clan. Like this little society thing is very important. Like come on, the Astartes made warrior lodges, right? Because they wanted their societies in lore.
That is a
So
very good point.
basically,
That is a very
even
good
even
point.
though even though it didn't end up being a very positive thing in most cases, I would say that that's a very good point. Come on,
Now
even
the
they
interesting
needed that,
question
right?
is,
Yeah.
you and I, both content creators, are we going to be on the same lodge, or are we going to have our own lodges? And then what fun things can that lead to from a content point of view, like lodge v lodge stuff, and yeah, could be some.
It's a very interesting thing. In Horus Heresy Legions, I had my own, but it was more of like a place where me and my friends were hanging around.
Yeah.
We never really did a serious thing on it. Right now, I'm not planning to make my own lodge. I'm actually already planning to join a certain lodge if it gets created when the when the oh my god, when this becomes
I think.
official, I
Mm,
think. Yeah, so most probably that's how I'm gonna roll. Like, I'm not gonna make it my own. So
okay.
there you go. But it would be very interesting.
Mm,
And I honestly really think that in terms of content creators, I would prefer if content creators were mostly in different ones, because it makes of a more interesting experience. Because if you got like only one lodge that monopolizes all the content creators, it's not that fun, because you
that's
only
true.
see like one perspective, you only see like one thing. Yeah, it's much more interesting to see like different opinions, because like imagine after that, when we're making like podcasts, like you could be talking about like what's going on in your lodge, like things that's not a secret, of course,
Mm.
like what's going on and what's your lodge playing and what are you thinking this season,
So
and then I could
do
be
you think
sharing
I
the same
shouldn't
thing.
create a lodge then? You think I should just join a different lodge
Oh
and be
no,
more
no, no, no!
impartial?
I don't think that at all. I think you could create. I'm just saying that I'm not creating my own, because I'm already planning to join a
Right,
lodge.
right.
If it gets created, I think it probably will, but it really depends if there's going to be if Warforge maintains these players or not. We'll see how that rolls. You don't know, you never know how it's going to happen. But if you're thinking of
Yeah,
making one, you
I
should
don't really know.
definitely make one.
Honestly, because obviously you've experienced it before in HHL. I've not really experienced this. The games I've played, they didn't really do this sort of thing, like Gwent and
Hmm.
Runeterra and Tessel, and they never had this sort of feature. So it'll be a Hearthstone. It'll be a completely new thing for me, and I kind of need to kind of see what it is first, I think, to understand. But yeah, the other thing though, as we've been talking about this and thinking about things that the game needs, I think I didn't say a lot on the start, but there is one thing that I do think
Hmm.
it needs, and that is just deeper, what I would call meaningful mechanics. It's something that you, I, and Papa all talked about last week actually, which is that if you just think about a control deck, for example, like there's no true control decks in the sense of the word. If you think about a control deck in Magic the Gathering or a control deck in Hearthstone or something like Runeterra, I don't think we have them. Even Gruk Control, I was actually thinking about. I came up with this title, Speed Control. I actually think it's kind of like speed control, because I guess technically, yes, you do start out as the control deck, and technically, you it is correct to not trade face, and it on a turn by turn basis it is that, but that deck can very quickly turn into the beatdown, and with things like proper Killy and Warbikers and Makari, I mean, it can very quickly become, I'm playing Uriel, right? I'm going to race you and aggro you down. Like, it can very quickly become that, right? So I kind of came up with this term of speed control or tempo control, because most of these decks, like even like Imatech and Orcs, that you still have to play tempo. Like control decks in other games, you just sit back, keep your resources, don't play anything. I don't think you can play this game that way. So I just want to see and it's not just control. I just want to see deeper, meaningful mechanics. Mechanics that actually. Who's using mob at the minute? Who's using, I don't know, frenzy? There's a lot of mechanics in the game that they don't
Eh,
mean anything. They don't matter at all. Quite frankly, they could not exist, and the game
Head
wouldn't be any different.
mechanics, yeah. Swarm, for example, yeah.
Yeah,
Which is
Swarm is.
really upsetting.
Yeah, Swarm is
I
terrible.
really want the change to the High Fleet Leviathan so that Turvagon can be a thing. I
Oh
really,
man,
really
hundred
want that.
percent. Because Turvagorn concept is a late game concept. It's a great idea. Like this idea that we're going to slowly turn the corner, slowly overwhelm you, and you're just going to do nothing about it. Brilliant, but it doesn't work, and that's because the mechanics aren't right.
You know what I loved in Horus Heresy Legions? There were two decks that I used to love the most. It was the Magnus Control, which used to play for late game and his transformation and stuff. This was long ago before some changes dropped. And it was the old Mortarion. The newer one is a bit of a cancer. Like the old one used to be so funny. Its warlord ability that he had was you could either cure poison from your own unit, or you could remove stun or poison from your allied unit, or stun an enemy unit. That was his warlord power. It was
Mm,
very interesting. You could keep people in stun, and the whole point for him was like he would poison someone and stun it, so that poison basically was you would apply it, and the next turn the unit died, but it did get one turn to act before it died. So you would poison it, stun it, and it was basically gone. So With Mortarion, you slowly used to control the board until you dropped the Death Shroud.
Yeah.
And Death Shrouds were really what they were supposed to be. Like, it was an 8 energy 8/8, and the ability was that when it died, as long as you didn't have any other units on your side of the board, it would resurrect again. So, like, that I think was
Yeah.
very, very cool. Of course,
Yeah.
it was weak to getting silenced and stuff like that, but it was a cool concept. Like, that's a control deck
Yeah.
right there. You have to
And you need
survive,
stuff,
you
yeah.
play.
And
Yeah.
you need stuff like that like fundamentally enables the archetype. Like, imagine the Tau Ethereal, right? Imagine an
Hmm.
ethereal leader. Imagine if his ability would. Imagine if he basically couldn't be attacked by the enemy warlord.
Oh,
Now,
scary.
I think that's a very cool, and, and so there's two ways, right? So one thing could be that it's just a passive ability. By the way, passive abilities is something they could bring in, but passive ability is it just can't be attacked by the enemy warlord. Or it could be it's my turn. I spend my 1 or 2 energy, and it gives me something. So it could be, I don't know, discounts a card in my hand by 1, or it could give me, gives whatever, gives shield to a unit, but it also means I can't be attacked by the enemy warlord until my next turn. So it gives me a turn of immunity. Now, when you that's a meaningful mechanic because, as we've said many times, you can't clear the enemy warlord, and a controlled deck traditionally can clear the board. Well, that mechanic would get around that, right? It would enable us to say, okay, you got proper killie, hiya, you can't hit me.
You can't do it.
And also, I think it's quite fitting because the whole idea of the ethereal, right, is like the Tau army are, he's leading from the back, right? Like you've got to get through the whole Tau army to touch an ethereal. So I kind of like it thematically as well.
Yeah, there was a similar ability in Legions called Duplicitous. It was for the Luther Dark Angel faction, the Fallen, and it's so annoying. It's not the Warlord that has it; it's the troops that have it, and it is so terrifying because we've mentioned many times that one of the things that makes the Everguild card games different is that Warlords having attack and being able to take out the troops. Well, surprise, against the Defenders of Caliban, you don't do that.
Yeah.
They just drop troops and they just stick there until you take it out with tactics or troops,
Mm,
and you can suddenly end up with a very traditional Hearthstone type of
mm.
deck on them, which is fun but not fun for the opponent. So everything is possible for sure.
I'm,
Like
I'm, de-
we could see something like that.
I'm developing this ethereal concept in my head because I'm also wondering what stats would the ethereal have. Like at first I was like, well, maybe he'd be a 1/1, but then I'm like, well, maybe he's a 0/0. Maybe if his ability is I can't be attacked by the enemy warlord, you make him a 0/0, which means he can't attack either. Like that's the payoff of that, and like then he relies on that. And I actually think that's very fitting with the lore as well, because it's not like the ethereal's out there. Well, I know obviously the one with the big blade he attacks, but most of them don't, right? Anyway, we're getting into kind of like card design, but I think the point is about like we just need more meaningful mechanics that kind of add depth to the game. Should we have a look at this meta report?
Absolutely.
Right, so we had a meta report. This came out literally on the when did it come out? The 7th of February. I'm gonna actually just put it on the screen so people can see. So basically, it says that this is inside the first 2024 ranked season meta report. So this is for the entire season of January, which the caveat, Ecclesiarch, obviously you and I know, is that they messed up because Gazgul needed a nerf, and they didn't do it until about 5 days into this season, right? So we have to think about that when we look at this data. That the orcs are going to be slightly better than they should be, and certainly Gazgul's stats are going to be slightly better than they should be because they were getting the benefit of people milking the old patch. That makes sense?
That makes a lot of sense because even like just to tell you, as I was playing the game, the thing was that I met only one Gaskell mostly, which was Vlasia, and everybody else was not playing Gaskell. And if somebody was playing Gaskell, I was mostly steamrolling through them without much issue. Like whereas when I would see a Grok, I was like, I don't want to play against that. So it was still solid. The Gaskell was still solid, but there were not nearly enough people playing that in the highest ranks for me to think that he should have such a high win rate. So
Yeah.
I certainly think, because if there's like one person piloting him very well, sure. But the thing is, his use rate was also quite all right. So if you take a look, he has a 10% use rate in the higher ranks, which is on par with Uriel Ventress use rate, which is also 10%. And it doesn't make sense because there were so many Uriels and there were just a few Gaskell. So I think you are right. The first week really, you got to really factor in the first week in there when you're saying that
it's really
Gaskell has such a high win rate.
skewed the data a little bit. So that's what we're going to do, is not make sense of this. So let's start with the faction rankings then. So overall, it looks like yet again the Black Legion were the most popular, 27.3% user rate or play rate. So again, no surprise there. For some reason, Chaos have always, I think it was the same last season. They've always been really high on the play rate. And you know, bearing in mind what we just said about Orcs, the Goth Orcs are coming in at a 54.49%, which is the highest win rate. But actually, if it wasn't for the Gazgul thing that we just talked about, that might be a little bit lower. And that would mean that actually this is overall, like across the, you know, all ranks of play, beginners, top, you know, the whole thing. It's much more even. Like this looks quite positive in terms of both play rate and win rate, with Tyranids actually being the lowest win rate, which is kind of interesting given that people thought that this was going to be the Tyranid season.
This is actually very interesting because if you take a look, if you would like take a look at the win rates in total, Goth Orcs are number one, followed by the Black Legion, followed by the Sotek Dynasty. Then you got Ultramarines and Saimhan barely breaching, and then you have Leviathan under 50. I would say this has a couple of reasons. So let me tell you like why I think this is the case, just my opinion on it. So Goth Orcs, I still believe, are the top faction in terms of consistently being good.
Yeah.
So them being the highest doesn't really like surprise me.
Nope.
The Black Legion one doesn't surprise me either because I've already said that in the lower ranks, Black Legion is a death sentence for most people. That's why a lot of people are complaining that Harken, the World Claimer, is broken, which I deny fully. He's not he's not that powerful. That's why you don't see him in top 50 at all. But Abaddon is but he's good. He's okay. He's, don't get me wrong, guys. He's not crap. Like he's pretty good. But
and he's a starting Warlord, isn't he? Remember.
He's a starting Warlord as well. So I think since this is the total stats, the Black Legion just smashing, let's just say smashing the lower ranks also factors in.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to the Sotek Dynasty, I think that also kind of makes sense because fighting the Necrons once again on lower ranks is very difficult, and on higher ranks, even like Scarabs are very annoying to deal with. Emotech is pretty hard to deal with. So overall, them having a positive win rate is as not surprising. The reason why I think Saimhan and Ultramarines have a lower win rate is very simple. First is that despite the change for Uriel, people were really used to Uriel being the worst of the warlords for Ultramarines. So I think it took a while before the people caught on and started using some decks. And there was your masterclass. There were some people saying, there were people posting, and then they picked up. I think they picked it up a little bit later. And as for like Kalgar, I think Kalgar is not in a great spot right now. Pyro Tiger is, I still argue that is pretty good. I still think that all three Ultramarines are playable in top 50, not in top 10, but in top 50 for sure. But overall, I think the main reason is that the people did not pick up on the Uriel train soon enough.
Yeah.
When it comes to the Saimhan, Saimhan have like this thing. If you don't play a good Eldar deck, then you're going to lose.
Yeah.
And the Eldar is a pretty balanced faction, but you need to know the good deck on them to play them well.
And you need to have the legendary cards.
Yeah, they're essential. Like playing without, for example, this like most of their like they have at least 4 legendaries that they gotta include in their deck. Wailing Doom, Nadu Fireheart.
They have the best overall collection of legendaries, and they're all essential, basically.
Absolutely, yeah, almost all, and I think like they're very, very important, and yeah, that's one of the reasons as well. And the Tyranids having the low thing, I know that a lot of people were fuming over this and saying that Tyranids are still shit, e.g., do something about it. I disagree. I think Swarmlord is one of the best warlords, and Neurotrope is really good. The only one that's really bad right now is probably the Tervigon. I'm not sure about the Terror yet. Terror had a crappy win rate, but that's mostly because he's new and a lot of
It's
people
been
were
like
just spamming
it's been
him.
like 2 hours. Yeah, exactly.
But when you're factoring in the very low win rate for Tyranids, you need to also understand that Tyranids are the worst faction in the game until level 20 Forge. So this is something
Yes.
that people don't consider.
Yes. So there's the level 20 Forge, and the other thing to consider is who is the nemesis for Tyranids?
Orcs.
Exactly, and here they are at the top. So this is the problem that we're going to have uh, wherever we Tyranids seem like they might be meta, then Orc players pop up and kind of with a hard removal, they just laugh at their stealth units and kind of remove the board. Yeah, but I think you gave a really good analysis there. The only thing I would add to what you said is that
Hmm.
the Sautek dynasty again in that first week when Gazgul was meta, Scarabs were the counter. So they may also have got a benefit in both play rate and win rate just from that first week. Whereas afterwards, I think the Scarabs actually dropped off, and we saw more of a kind of Imhotep control. So
Yeah.
let's have a look at the Warlord rankings then. So with the Warlord rankings, as we can see, Gazgul did come in at the top with 61.4%, but as I've already made the case, I actually think this would be slightly lower if you think of it from post patch. People really did milk Gazgul. I think one guy put like 1,500 MMR on in that first week, right, by
Hmm.
just spamming Gazgul. So this is definitely boosted by that, and would definitely be. I'd be confident in saying it would be below 60% if you took that week off. However, however, I really do believe that Gazgul would still be tier one, and
Absolutely.
there are two reasons for that. One is that he can produce a very good aggro deck. I'm not talking about Green Horde. You can build Gazgul in a way where you make use of the fact that the Orc faction has the best cards, and you just play on tempo. And with 40 health, being always able to put a distraction on the board, if you do get a decent board, being able to buff them all for +1 is still a strong mechanic, even though it's situational. But most importantly, just the 40 health and the combination of wanting to trade face when you've got more health gives him a huge advantage, especially when you consider that you run Warbikers, Makari, and Proper Killy. So Gazgul aggro is very good. You can still do things like play the Grot with Unbridled Carnage, for example, to have more burst in there. I think the aggro is great. I also think the control deck is good as well, and I actually believe that's what Barker played. It's similar to the Grook deck. But I won't get too into the weeds, but just to say that I do think that Gazgul is still a very, very good deck, but this win rate is slightly inflated because of delay to
Absolutely.
the patch, basically. Any other observations? I'll just shut up for a minute that you want to chip in on the Warlords.
Yeah, once again, like it's something that you need to take a look. I think now that we look at the individual ones, what we said kind of comes into vision because the second warlord with the highest win rate of 59% is Zemotech, the Stormlord, and this is for overall. This is not for the highest ranks,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Followed by the Swarmlord with 57, almost 58, then followed by Abaddon the Despoiler, followed by Kalgar,
Yeah.
Sylar Hexcore,
This is not the meta, guys. This
Orcish.
is not the meta. This is your point of this is not like the top 50. Legendary looks very different.
Exactly. Then you got Uriel with 48% win rate, which is really funny because that's not true. And Harken World Claimer comes in with a 51 with the highest use rate of 14%.
Yeah.
So this kind of shows that what is going on in the overall thing that, as we said, because a lot of people are playing Chaos, a lot of people are playing Harken because maybe he's the starting Warlord and so on. So there's a lot of things there that kind of show the Emotech once again like 59. But look at this. As soon as you go to the higher ranks, Gaskell remains at pretty much exactly the same win rate, but his use rate goes from 3% to 10,
Yeah.
almost 11.
So the 3% of people that were playing Gazgul, what that says is that basically people who were higher ranked were playing Gazgul. And I
Absolutely.
think that's fundamental, because I think people just thought, oh, Gazgul's been nerfed, well, but good players realised Gazgul's still very good. He's still very good. He's going to help me
Absolutely.
climb. Yeah.
Also, look at this. Another interesting thing. So, Gruk Face Ripper has a 51% with 7 usage, but in the higher ranks, his usage drops to 5, but his win rate increases to 58.
Now look at that, guys. Like this is one of the biggest things. Like if we're comparing the global rankings versus the top 50, let's just go back and look. Gruk was sitting way down at
Hmm.
51.8%, and people must be thinking, well, BJ, what are you on about? Like in my opinion, Gruk is the number one. Gruk is the best deck in the game, and I've made a video saying it's the best deck in the game. There's lots of minutia around that, but you'd be looking at this stats going, BJ doesn't know what he's talking about. Then you come down to the top 50 and you go, hold up a second, Grook's in second place all of a sudden. But in my opinion, he's actually not. In my opinion, again, as we've already said, Gazgul's inflated here because he got the broken Gazgul week where everybody played and got the win rate up. If you take that out, I would wager that Uriel and Grook both had a higher win rate than Gazgul. And so I'd be kind of confident in saying that that should look like Grook, then Uriel, then Gazgul, and then Galen. That's probably where it sits. If you take into account the patch, right?
Absolutely. And there we got another very interesting one where it's Uriel Ventris with his use rate dropping by 2%, but his win rate increasing from 48 to 58.
Yeah.
So essentially 10% rise in win rate in the higher ranks. This once again shows that it's about how you understand to pilot the deck. The new Uriel people, I think this is mostly because people had a hard time readjusting, understanding that Uriel doesn't need late game cards like dreadnoughts and like repulsors and stuff like that, and adjusting to the actual good way to play him. That's the difference. So once again, comparison of using something in the lower ranks and the higher ranks.
And just to
Med,
and just to
yeah.
build and just to build on the Uriel for a second, bearing in mind that he is the starting warlord for Ultramarines. So I
Hmm.
think you said earlier it was the second most played warlord overall, and so you have lots of people playing him, but at beginner level, and then you've got people like Papa Beard. And I mean, I played against Papa Beard, and trust me, when you play Papa Beard playing Uriel, it's a very different experience. Like he knows that deck so well, and he plays it so well, and so that's what we're seeing here, right? We're seeing, Snowfire, I think, finished fourth with the Uriel as well. So people like Papa and Snowfire using Uriel in the top 50, we suddenly see that huge boost to the win rate, even though, as we said, because he's a starting warlord, he's played a lot more broadly. So yeah, definitely.
Exactly. Then you got Medreal Galen,
Hmm.
whose use rate and win rate both have increased. Medreal Galen goes from 6% use rate to 9, and her win rate goes up by 4%. That's not a huge thing, but that once again shows how balanced the Eldar faction is in general. Like, it's overall a good faction for beginners and like uh, high level players alike. It's just that obviously her win rate would go up because Eldar, as I said, if once you get to know how to play them and get the cards, they become very powerful. So that's like a very important thing. And Emotech the Stormlord still very high. His use rate increases, but his win rate drops by 4%, which is absolutely normal because, as I said, Emotech is good, Emotech is great, but for beginner players, it's destructive. So learning how to play against it becomes more evident in higher ranks. So that's why his win rate drops a bit.
I was going to ask, were you surprised that Imatech, that first of all, he had a higher play rate in the top 50 than Swarmlord, and also secondly that the win rate is as high as it is in the top 50. Like both of those things surprised me a little bit. What do you think?
Actually, it's doesn't surprise me that he has a higher win rate because Swarmlord, once again, Tyranids are a little difficult to pull off. You need to be good with them.
But this is top
It's
50. We're looking at top 50 here, remember?
Well, once again, the orcs. You need to think about that one. So
That's
there's
true.
actually two reasons. There's actually two reasons there. I think there's also the fact that Uriel is pretty good against Swarmlord if you know how to do it, because Uriel on 3 energy just drops this Inceptor, and good luck dealing with that
Yeah.
with Swarmlord. So it's very difficult overall. So that's I think mostly it's the Nemesis system that they have. Like there's mostly he has two. pretty bad matchups there, even though he's good against Emotech himself. But Emotech, on the other hand, he's pretty good against Uriel. So that also factors in.
Right. So you think Imitex, the good Imitex, the Baldukos, and they were basically farming Uriels, you think?
Yeah, that's also the thing. And Emotech also has a lot of dedicated players because, as I said, this gets very boring
Mm,
playing him.
mm,
And you know what I mean. So it's
mm,
very, very annoying, just
mm.
playing against him. And the people who play him in the higher ranks usually know what they're doing, whereas a lot of people play Swarmlord in higher rank just because it can also face roll.
Another interesting thing to note for me, looking at the top 50 is, yeah, I mean, again, obviously Abaddon was the last Warlord in there to have over a 50% win rate and was the most played in the top 50. So that's a point of note. Also quite interesting that Zephyblade was actually played more than Anvia this season. I think that's the first season where Zephyblade wasn't like the poor boy of the Elder faction, and actually achieved a higher win rate as well. Very, very, very close to that 50% win rate, which suggests that Zephyblade might be a little bit of an unexplored, possibly a bit of an unexplored warlord there, and that actually might be a little bit more powerful. One of the things I started to notice late into the season, for example, was that if you think Abaddon's the most played, right? One of the things
Hmm.
about Abaddon is they tend to play big bodies, and they can obviously play the camouflage spell, which gives them the +2 health. And what I realised is that Zephyrblade's extra shuriken damage can be the difference in finishing off beefy units where the normal stats, if you like, of the Eldar units wouldn't be able to do it. And I wonder whether that played into it. Also has good synergy with stealth, right? Because you can drop a unit in stealth, and then next turn you can. I think you made a point in one of your videos that you can do a lot of damage then when you combine the shuriken the next turn. So yeah, Zephyrblade's kind of like one to watch, and perhaps one to kind of for us to test and experiment a little bit more with.
Absolutely, absolutely. With Abaddon, I'm not surprised because, as you can see, like from lower ranks with Harkin at 14% and Abaddon at 8, you suddenly have a rapid rise for Abaddon to 16%, where World Lamer drops by 10% and his win rate drops to 41%.
Mm.
So that's a big change, and that's once again showing just how much better Abaddon in reality is than World Claimer, despite a lot of people still thinking that, oh, no. But that is the HP, this consistency, the sustainability, everything really makes Abaddon the better warlord. And I think Abaddon would have also had a higher win rate as well if he didn't have like 16% usage, because most of the ladder was playing Abaddon,
Yeah.
and most of them were playing the wrong Abaddon. So that was
Yeah,
also that
yeah,
problem.
that's true. There's different versions of it, isn't there? I'm surprised a
Yeah.
bit about Neurothrow. I thought that might have a slightly higher win rate. Orican obviously dropped off a lot. Orican and the Scarabs, once Gazgul went, they obviously dropped off a lot. Probably would have been even lower actually if the patch hadn't had got there on
Hmm.
time. Interesting though, in one of our ongoing debates, is who's better, Calgar or Tigerius? Actually,
And look at this.
Calgar did do much better in the top 50 than Tigerius.
Terrifying. 38% on Tigers. I really don't understand how people have 38. Guys, how did we end up here, people?
I,
What is
I just don't think the deck's that good, dude. Like, the main reason for Tigerius is to play the vehicle synergy, isn't it? And I just don't think that deck is strong enough. In the top 50 against this field, it's just not strong enough at all.
perhaps he's in a bad place. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. And Terror of Vangas propping up the rear. Should we? What do you think to that? I mean, obviously, it's first of all, it's got a 0.31% play rate in the top 50, and even in the global ones, it was like 0.10. So, should we
Hmm.
read much into the win rate there?
No, I don't think it's too early.
It's too early. Yeah, I agree. I think this season we'll know whether Terror is any good or not, and I suspect it's not the worst Warlord. Actually, I think it's somewhat better than that. So I don't think it's the best, but I definitely don't think it's as bad as these stats are showing.
You know
Um,
what I'm also surprised at? The fact that Sylar Hexcorn has higher win rate than World Claimer. I would say that's mostly
hmm.
probably because of the low play rate of Sylar, because people who played it most probably know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So there might be that, but yeah, I'm not surprised that these three. I'm actually surprised at one, but I'm not surprised that two of the worst warlords are still Tervigon and Zandrech because they're not good. They're
Yeah.
not. They need some love. They
Yeah.
need some love for sure.
And I'm not a huge draft player, but just very quickly, anything from you in terms of the Warlord draft standout data?
Well, honestly speaking, draft is a very interesting thing overall. I think the reason is that in draft we need to consider that you don't get to choose your deck as much as in constructed, right? So you get to kind of uh, take what you can get, and you need to be good at just choosing the correct cards. But there's also the fact that in terms of draft, it's about which faction has the better, you could say which faction has a better overall card pool, right? So if we take a
Yeah.
look at the draft, once again Goskul has the highest win rate, which doesn't surprise. Let's not get into that anymore because I think it's the same
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
With also the fact that orcs are pretty good in draft, but then you got Abaddon, which absolutely makes sense for me because Chaos is really good in draft. Chaos was always really good in draft because in draft there is a lower chance that the enemy is going to have answers to your units. Then we have Madriel Galen, followed by Eliak Blade, which doesn't surprise me once again because the Eldar are really good at draft once again because most of their units are pretty good, and as they can both play very aggressive, and it's really hard to stop them. Followed by Emotech, which which is not that surprising either because it's hard to deal with things like Lich Guard and stuff. And the thing is that the Necrons also have some very good draft options. Like there's this one that gives you Lich Guard, a Praetorian, and Technomancer, and if you roll something like that, like you can easily have a constructed deck on them. Then you got Harkin and Swarmlord, and everything else is like very
Yeah.
normal. Like you got Grok, Sylar. Once again, I'm not surprised that Zandrech and Tervigon are the lowest ones. Well, Varo Tigurius as well. But you know what really surprises me? Surprises me that in draft Oricon the Diviner has 4 to 6. I would
Hmm.
say that is very surprising for me because Oricon the Diviner is very easy to play in draft. Like you just choose the Scarabs and you just win. Because what are the chances of somebody having a board wipe in draft? Not too high, right? So I'm really surprised that people have not been abusing Oricon in draft. Very
Interesting.
surprising.
Yeah, I wonder whether the 5 health, like Gazgul, Abaddon being like, and Eliak all being up there. Like, I wonder whether the 5 health and Imatech just seems to make a much bigger difference in draft. But yeah, I
Not
mean,
only in draft, in reality as well, it
yeah,
makes a difference.
true.
BJ, like,
Yeah.
and once again, because as I said, like in Forest Heresy Legions, to counteract, they have plus
Well,
5 health.
I don't know
It
if
was the
that's.
less
I
cards.
don't know
So
though.
yeah,
I don't know because I would argue in ranked that Gruk, Uriel, and Galen are all tier 1. And well, maybe there's an argument that Greg Galen is top of tier 2. I don't know. It's either bottom of tier 1 or top of tier 2. But they're all 35 healths, right? And I don't count Gazgul. Well, no, I guess I do still count Gazgul. Fair enough. Yeah, so I think there we've got 3 guys that have 35 that are top of the meta. But again, you're able to construct a deck around it. Whereas, like you said in draft, you're a lot less restricted, and that's where I think maybe the
yeah.
health kind of matters a bit more. So yeah, great. We got it's really cool. By the way, I'm really glad and grateful to Everguild that we get this and that we get it promptly at the end of the season. I think it's really good. It kind of confirms where, as I said, my meta report video came out very early in the season, and basically where I was leading. This does kind of confirm for me. So I would say in my tier 1 to 4 at the minute that I believe tier 1 is actually Gruk, Uriel, Gazgul, and I had Galen at the bottom of tier 1, but I think that thinking about something you said, which is that's considering that you've got all of the cards and you understand what the meta deck is. Like if you play Galen like a Shrigma male, then I think it is competitively it is in there as like bottom of tier 1, but you could easily make the strong argument that it's top of tier 2, and we can even see in the win rate there is a bit of a drop, right? There's like a 4% drop to Galen. So maybe we say Galen is like top of tier 2, and then we've got Imhotep, Swarmlord, and Abaddon making up the rest of tier 2, and then I think underneath there, that's where I'd go from like Zephyrblade to Neurothrope as tier 3, and the rest is sort of like meme tier. But the big takeaway from this data for me is like the Gruk Face Ripper, and what I just want to point people's attention to is just look at the difference between the top 50 and the global, and that is because Gruk is a hard. The control deck that me and Alski ran. It's a very different deck compared to like the Uriel and the Galen, which just play out on tempo. It's a very hard deck. There's lots of different lines of play. Knowing the matchups really helps, but the power spike of it is probably the highest, if that makes sense. So it's a high skill cap, but it's got a really high power spike. So that would be my takeaway. Any kind of like final summary thoughts from you, just like on anything from the meta report?
Yeah, I would say that this once again shows that the meta is pretty balanced. I think if we were to remain without a patch 1 month, we would see the Gaskell win rate decline a little bit. There would be some small changes to the win rates, but overall the picture would be the same. I think this should be a signal to Everguild not to just nerf the factions to the ground.
Yeah.
Start buffing the weaker warlords. Like, let's buff Zandrek next. Like,
Yeah.
what do we do about Zandrek? Like, do we approach it the same way as Uriel and just give him an extra card, or what do we do? I think that would be kind of boring. So I think what they need to do is, once again, I'm just gonna put out my suggestion out there. I think one of the things that Everguild did really well and started doing in Legions was the extra one-time use ability cards that they added for 35 HP warlords, like for Raldoron, the Arcane of Wisdom, and for Corswain, the Duelist Triumph, and something like that. That could really help some warlords, because I remember Ahriman used to be considered a bad warlord, and as soon as they added the Patterns of Fate to him, his special ability, I remember a guy made War Master with him instantly in that season. So like it can really make a big difference.
Cool.
And the fun thing is Ahriman didn't receive any nerfs after that, but wasn't like that high tier anymore because people adapted to how to stop him, like usually with bursts and stuff like that. But anyway, what I want to say is, like, I think either they approach it with these special cards, either buy extra cards, or just change the ability a little bit. Like Necron Warrior, I mean, it's like the Grot from Gaskell, but the problem is that Gaskell has so many other options later on to play aggro and stuff, whereas the Necrons do not. So just drop, as I said, one of the problems with Zandrek is that by dropping your Necron Warriors, you're essentially just messing up your Tomb World. So they need to kind of think about what they can do about them. So, yeah.
Very, very interesting. Yeah, I'm not expecting that much of a shake-up from them in terms of the meta report this season. There's been no balance patch. I think we'll see the Terror will come and land maybe somewhere in the middle, but I don't think it'll be much different. I think ultimately, Gruk and Uriel and Galen will still be the top three, but we'll see. Maybe one of our infamous content creators is going to revolutionize Imhotep or Zagstruck, and maybe that will make a difference, but we shall have to see.
We shall have to see indeed.
See how that works out. Anyway, my man, it's been an absolute pleasure, as always. Thank you very much. And guys, I hope you've enjoyed that. Let us know in the comments, again, anything that we've said today that you have any thoughts on, or any ideas or suggestions, anything that you would like to see in future podcasts. We do have some guests that we're lining up. It's just trying to line up times and things like that. And if you're wanting to come on the show, let us know. Please subscribe to both our channels. We really appreciate it. It helps us grow our channels and therefore produce more content for you guys. And thanks for listening, and we will see you in the next one. Ciao.